Usyk will
You
quit.
be taken to school.
Usyk will quit. You're wrong. You're going to get the shock of your life.
No, it's better to burn out than fade away.
There we go.
He is not elite yet. Tell me one elite fighter he's beat.
You want to see what the Silk said?
Yes.
I don't know whether to float or gloat.
What size feet is he, Ben?
Hello and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, probably the best boxing podcast in the world. My name is Ben Doughty.
You're in second place.
Oh, it's thrown you, hasn't it? Because you're in a different fucking order. Go on, whoever wants to announce themselves, go ahead.
This is Silk a Larger Day.
And my name is the Gary Stretch.
So what do you think of the little video, guys? You like it?
I love it. That was really good. I was stunned. I was like, why am I laughing already?
Yeah,
and, I saw there was editing, beautiful editing job.
I figured we deserved a bit more than that basic ident, which seemed to fizzle out within about 2 seconds.
Brilliant.
So when you said, "Oh, wait for this because it's going to be a nice surprise," I thought it was just like the red screen. I was like, "Oh Jesus, we had to hold it for that." And then what do you know?
Yeah. So I think we should keep that as an ident. But in any case, guys,
you've been editing all day, Ben.
Say again. It didn't take that long, though.
I think it was a bit amateurish.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit amateurish, and I think I looked very angry. Not that I can deny my anger.
Yeah. Well,
what could you possibly be angry about, Gary Stretch?
The point situation of the fights at the minute.
Well, on that note, we actually had a rare weekend when we all got 2 points. We all got 2 out of 2, which is pretty rare lately. So the Silk's still in front. But
Silk was angry with them points.
Quickly,
please, before we go quickly, can we just discuss one thing? The scoreboard being the point of contention. Right now, I guess we should start last first. The one who remains in last place with a 21-14 record, 60% batting average, that would be our much beloved Sugar. At 63.5%, that's practically 64%, by the way. The inimitable, the stretchy one himself, Gary, 21-12. 63.5, like I said, almost 64. And the one that has been occupying first place for the last little while, the non-magnanimous, very quiet, and absolutely always, I keep it on the low. 20-7, 74% for the Silk himself.
It is indeed. Let's not dwell on that. There's things I could say.
You take these odds to Vegas, and you can feed your family.
Listen, what I could say is you still have less wins than both of us, and you've participated in less fights. You've picked on less fights, so you got the best percentage win. That's the only way we know you're winning.
And I could very well be.
What I don't understand is I was way ahead of everyone. And all of a sudden the points just.
The craziest thing happened. The craziest thing happened. What that happened? It's something called like math, I think.
Yeah. Unbelievable, isn't it? It's amazing how it creeps up on you like that. Listen, fellas, we got them right last night anyway. Let's start in London because I attended the show myself as a last-minute kind of impulse thing. My good friend Spencer Fearon said, "I got a couple of tickets if you want. Fancy going to the fight? It's only down the road from here." So I went along to the Copper Box and I saw the undercard, but I watched Johnny Fisher walk through Alan the Savage Babbage in 36 seconds. There's a limit to what you can say about it. I expected it to happen early. I don't think I quite expected it that early. Gary?
I actually did. It was like, I just figured Fisher's a heavyweight. He punches, he's aggressive.
Yeah.
And Babbage just gets hit. It's a matter of like, how long is it going to take him to just connect? And he will. And I thought it just going to, I didn't want to say, but I said to you, I don't see how he can win this fight. He's just going to get hit and he's going to get knocked out. And
yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
I
thought they might have a bit of a tear up for 2 rounds or something like that. It might literally go 2 rounds. And I thought it might be a little bit back and forth while it lasted, but nothing of the sort. He didn't land a shot, did he?
No, I just think he's too. Fisher hits. I mean, he's not the biggest hits in the world. He's certainly a good hitter, but it was a matter of, like, that at that weight when you get hit like properly, and I thought he's no defense back, but he's going to get hit and it's going to end. And of course, it was a bit quicker than we all thought, but it was a matter of first exchange. And if Fisher didn't freeze and he just went out like he, and he was great because he just opened up and it was over.
Silk, I know you're probably not so familiar with either guy, but what was I imagine you saw it. What was your take on it?
I was, pretty much what Gary said. I'm in line with the kid. He was powerful. He came out like it ended quicker than many people thought it would. There was a sense of kind of like, I don't know. I think you'd have to be careful not to, overly praise him for the performance in that.
Yeah, he did what he's supposed to do.
Yeah. There are times you can just get a little bit off and go a little bit too far, but absolutely an effective, powerful, convincing win.
Can we talk, since there's not much fight to talk about, can we talk about ring walks? Because I know you're into this whole kind of thing, Silk, and you sometimes pay attention and set store by the peripheral aspects, like the attire, the ring attire, the robes, the ring walks, all the rest of it. I kind of like what Fisher does, because he's into country and Western music. That's what he trains to down at the gym in Raynham in Essex. But also, he came out to two songs. He initially walked down the corridor to Whitesnake's "Here I Go Again on My Own," and then as he got into the arena, it kicked into Country Roads. And it's kind of, because a lot of people come out to kind of rap music or hip hop or more modern sounding or Mobo influenced music. It's kind of cool for someone who comes out to that kind of rock music and country and Western, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I really love it when people like express their personalities and what's going on, like where their mind is at when they come into a song that more or less expresses something that motivates them. I can kind of see it, I guess, in Whitesnake. Here I go again on my own kind of thing, because it's very much a solid.
You're on your own, yeah.
Yeah, you're more or less on your own when the bell rings. I understand that. But then when you put it with like the visualizations with Tawny Kitten, who is the redheaded hot girl, it's kind of like it takes me out of the moment. And
it does,
then,
because you start thinking about that instead.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of name is that as well, Tawny Kitten? When you're a sex goddess and you
let me tell you something, Ben. I don't even know, Ben. My brain has been abused so often and consistently since 1984. Maybe that came out. I can't even believe I remembered that name, Tawny Kitten.
It shows you what's important to you, priorities, isn't it?
Yeah, I could. I mean, it took me 2 years to get my alphabet down. Never mind. Wow.
Before we switch to the stateside action, let me just ask, by the way, Gary, did you have a ring walk tune? Well, obviously, Eubank, his tune was the Tina Turner, Simply the Best. Did you have a favourite tune, Gary, or was it?
I did. I had a variation of the Rocky theme, but not the. It was Bill Conti who did all the music for Rocky. It wasn't the Rocky theme, but it was a piece of music that was in Rocky, and it was like a piano piece. It's as much as it's not like a head-banging song, it was, for me, it always inspired me. It was beautiful, powerful. It had a little bit of, and I kind of did my own little mix of this piano, and then it kicks into this Rocky stuff, but it wasn't Rocky like, like it wasn't that stuff. It was just this. I found there was a beautiful piece that Bill Conti wrote, and it was, for me, I used to listen to it, and it just inspired me.
Now, did it do anything for you on the way to the ring, Gary? Like, do songs do anything for you when you're on the way to the ring, or is it for the person when you finish watching it and you're looking back at your fight? You can kind of color your.
Yeah,
effort.
do you
shut down? Because this particular music, it was a piano. It was powerful. It was. I used to reflect on it sometimes. Like I would. You get in camp. You've been dieting. You've not seen your family. You give everything up, and weeks go by, and you go through various phases where you're feeling sorry for yourself, all this rubbish, and when you get to a certain point where you've put enough of your time and you're working, that I used to get to a certain point before every fight. It could be a few days before, it could be the day of, it could be a week before, but there'd be a certain point. I'd get to a certain point mentally, and I'd say, fuck it, let's do it. And then I was fine. I would just say, it's like I'd look up to God or to whoever and say, you know, how far does this fucker want to go to beat me? Like, let's do it. And I would commit to myself. And ironically, when I did this, I used to have these moments when I would just get to a certain point when you just cross the line that you're ready. Okay, let's go. And then, so this music was quite, what's the word? It was kind of it used to make me focus. So in all the madness of fight nights and people coming in the changing room and everyone saying hello and all that stuff, when I heard this music just before the fight, I used to just settle and focus, and okay, it would remind me to just get ready and be focused.
Like on the way to the ring, though.
Remember why I was there.
Yeah, sorry. When you're on the way to the ring, though, does it do anything for you? Does your song do anything for you?
Yeah, it used to make me, you connect. People connect music with memories. You hear a song, it takes you back to a place. So I used to play this song when I'd get to this certain point in my training where I was ready to go, where you're all in. And so I used to connect with, I'm ready. And so I would play it as I would walk out, and it would just take a sense of memory, just make me feel, okay, let's go. We're ready. So it was nothing drastic, but I played at a certain point of training so many times when I was finally thought to myself, okay, we're ready. And so in some subconscious way, when I heard it just before fight, it would just say, okay, let's go, let's do what we're going to do, and just focus. Nothing exciting, nothing to wind me up. It would just make me know that I'm ready.
So you absolutely don't play it for the public. Like, for instance, like Sid Bartlett said, clever choice of song, Country Roads. Very easy to sing along to a nostalgic song. So he's involving the audience in it. But how does that hype the fighter up?
No, for me, it was like, they're not going to fight for me. So that's one of the few times you play a song for yourself. I think I guess some fighters play it for the ambience and for the audience. But for me, it was that was my time where I am on my own. I am going to do it, and so I'd play something that would get me in my mind, the right frame of mind, or just try and underline and remind me why I'm there, and just focus. And so it was a bit of a chill pill for me, not a chill pill in a put you to sleep. It was just regroup, focus. Okay, when I'd hear this, that would be like, okay, it's time to go and do it.
Okay. I've got to be honest. I was actually just intending a little aside there. Then we nearly went down this alleyway into a song that was devoted to the whole psychological experience of ring walks, which is okay. But I see people constantly making comments about Shakur Stevenson last night.
Yeah, let's go.
And it was the next thing I wanted to address. That is a very interesting area. Maybe we could come back to it at the end of the show, the other thing. But so the whole thing about Shakur Stevenson, I think we can all agree is wonderfully skilled, talented, defensively adept and savvy.
Don't get it.
But the thing is, people seem underwhelmed. And I know, Silk, you in particular, have said constantly that a fighter should always have that hunter's kind of mindset and should be looking for the early finish. He should be looking to get rid of the guy and take it out of the judge's hands. And you're not seeing. I think Floyd Mayweather has had a massive legacy and effect.
Yes, it's absolutely 100% the Mayweather effect. Absolutely.
Yeah, go on, Silk.
But I think that's wrong, because I think if you look at Mayweather's career, he was an animal. He got people out of there. He was
in the earlier days. I mean,
he was ferocious, and I mean,
in the earlier days.
Yeah, but you've got to look at his career. It's such a long career, and like when he fought Canelo, right? This is how good he is. He schooled Canelo, absolutely schooled him. And Floyd was way past his prime. And Canelo was way in his prime. I think Canelo had 43 fights at the time. You can't tell me he's a novice. 43 fight professional. And to get schooled by a man who was late 30s. It's like he's that good. And people keep saying he's a passive fighter. Even as passive as Floyd was, he punished people. For me, Shakir is so passive. It's like he makes you miss and doesn't always make you pay. Like last night, he was backing up. He was so passive in the fight. It's like he's amazing talent, but I don't want to watch him, and I love watching.
And so many people say that.
You know what a lot of people say? A lot of people say that, Floyd, pity pat, he could punch. Yeah. Floyd can absolutely punch. So when he hits you, that's the only reason why these guys make these deals all of a sudden. You know what I mean? They're like, they'll get hit, they feel the pop, and if the more they try, the more they get countered, and they feel it, and they know it, eventually they're going to get hurt. So then they stop. They make there's that sort of like a quiet deal between one another. I'm not going to hit you harder than I have to, but if you get out of place, and I'm going to have to put you back in check. And so the fact that you're getting hit by something that stings and then you can't hit it in return kind of deflates a lot of guys' sales. So I understand that about Floyd, but it's still at the same time, his intent when he comes out is like the first 3 to 4 rounds, possibly even 5, is he's playing it ultra safe, and he's countering you, and he's just looking for spots, and it's a way in which to fight. It's a pattern. It's a natural pattern that he has, and I understand that. He could get away with it with the guys that he was fighting. They didn't take him out of his water, out of his comfort zone, and that's why there are a lot of fighters like Duran, like Hearns, like Hagler, like Leonard, all the rest of that kind of stuff. I believe they can take him out of his comfort zone and making him fight in a different way than he had to. So yeah, it is absolutely the Mayweather effect. It's that we're.
I don't think Mayweather did. I think Mayweather spent the first 2-3 rounds downloading.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what he said.
Pretty much the same thing. But here's the thing: he won't allow himself to get hit at the same time. So he's absolutely on defensive mode. A guy gets frustrated. Look, it's his way to hunt. I understand it. I respect it. It's up to the fighters to be able to adjust and make him fight differently. And it's the same thing with Shakur. It's like, you have your choice not to see him fight. And if his style bothers you so much, then you turn off. And if you turn off and it affects Shakur that much, then he's going to go back to the gym and he's going to work on the things that he needs to work on to become a more exciting fighter, or at least to finish guys off. You can't make people like your style or make people like what you do. And that's all there is to it. And the only way, if you decide to change up and put your chin on the mantelpiece for people to like, all of a sudden you're going to turn into, Matthew Saad Muhammad, then that's your choice, but it's not recommended as the way to go.
But I just don't see Shakur having not half the excitement of Mayweather. I mean, Mayweather made you miss in beautiful ways. Shoulder roll, he would make you miss and then counter with the right hand. He would do such beautiful defensive stuff. Where Shakur just gets out of the way. It's not even pretty half the time. It's just.
You think it's his foot movement? His foot movement is too much.
He's just very defensive, and like Floyd did it much better.
Well, he gives you the opportunity to punch, right? Like Floyd gives you the opportunity to punch at him,
and then makes you pay. Whether not always with a huge shot, but he makes you pay every time. Well, and you see him working, not to. You see like for me, that's why I used to love him, because I get what he's doing and I know how difficult it is to do what he does. Which he caught, I don't get the same satisfaction at all.
But regardless of how poor an imitation he may be, I still think that these guys are massively influenced by Floyd Mayweather, even if they're not replicating it, and even if they're not fully understanding it, Gary. I think it is something which is filtered through down to this generation.
I'm not arguing with that.
Haney's and Shakur Stevenson's.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with that. But the one thing I will say, Ben, is, there's very much a danger when you try and do someone else's thing. You're never going to be that other person. So, it does get lost in the translation at times. So it's a diluted version of Floyd or a diluted version of someone else. Uh-huh. I just don't think that is. And I'm a real appreciator of defense. I love watching people miss rather than get hit. If someone can make you miss, for me, I think it's beautiful. But I just don't get excited watching Shakur at all. And it's just, at a
43% KO percentage, at a 43% or 42% KO percentage, it's pretty predictable. You know what I mean? People do come to see the violence as well. There's a level of expectancy in boxing. And did
you hear as well that he turned down? He says he's a free agent now, right? He's free agent promotionally free from Top Rank, and he turned down a $15 million guarantee for 5 fights to re-sign with them, so he can be a free agent and go seeking big paydays and take control of his own affairs. Which is interesting in the light of the fact that Gary, even as a total boxing aficionado, says he doesn't enjoy watching him. If Gary doesn't enjoy watching him, he's going to struggle with a lot of the
Do you, Ben?
Ben,
would you get excited, Ben, at a Shakur fight?
No, not really, mate. I mean, obviously, I can look at what he does and I can appreciate certain things. I can enjoy it, but I always felt that Tank Davis was a better fighter or a better lightweight, and I've always fancied Tank to beat him. And people are starting to agree with that perception now. But previously, Shakur was the man. That was the narrative.
The only thing that would excite me about Shakur was if he could do it to Tank. That would be exciting. If he could make Tank miss all night and make him look stupid, then you'd have to take your hat off. I just don't know if he can.
Now, I think Davis is too smart. I think Davis is too smart to be missing him all night. You know, he knows when to.
He knows how to adjust. He knows how to, and that's another strength in boxing that's rarely ever discussed or talked about. And that's the ability. You look at Leonard and you look at Hearns and you look at their fight together, and I forget how initially it opened up, but you know, it started out like Hearns is dominant, and then Ray did things that kind of like got him a little bit closer and was getting closer. And then Ray became a little dominant. Then again, you know, Hearns became dominant because they switched up. They were able to do things differently than just the same predictable thing. You know what I mean? And the intent with one another, with both Hearns and Leonard, was to ultimately stop the other guy. So that's when you have the purity of boxing, when you have two guys with an intent not to go the distance. My intent
Hearns' intent changed though, didn't it, Michael? It very much changed. He wanted to survive and he wanted to win on points, and he nearly pulled it off.
Yeah, and he
trying to stop Ray once Ray chin-checked.
But it's not like he didn't try it the other way first.
No, exactly, which is
some guys will go in without that intent at all. It's like Hearns' intent was to stop Leonard. And let me tell you something. After Leonard hurt him, Hearns again, after a couple of rounds of clearing the cobwebs, he wanted to hurt Ray again. He started to come back down off his toes. That's when he got caught. He didn't just get
wobble Leonard.
Sorry?
Sorry, it was Ferdy Pacheco who was like, now he's wobbled Leonard. Now he's wobbled Leonard in the later rounds.
Yeah. And you know, so I think that's the beauty of boxing. There always has to be, you know, that intent, like you cannot go the distance with me. And that way the fan base is always getting 100% of their money's worth. And the fighters are like, you go through, it shows a fighter's character, which is so important. I'm not saying guys need to go toe to toe. I'm saying find the openings, like slip punches, block punches.
Commit to it, you know. I remember, you know what?
When you punch.
Keith Thurman years ago, when he was still knocking everybody out, he said it really beats me up. I really beat myself up about the fact that I've got 2 fights on my record that went the distance when he was still undefeated. He said, I don't get it. I literally can't process it. How can you go the distance if you're both really fighting? He said, you know, which is kind of closer to your mindset. And as I said, until I got to know you well, I didn't know you had that mindset because I kind of filed you with the cuties, you know. Whereas I realised that you are more of obviously a great boxer, but you saw yourself as a puncher and a hunter, which is I totally see how that fits in with your personality now.
Like I said, there are different ways to hunt, right? So you can go in and you can go forward, and that's your way to hunt. And you can back up and still hit with as much, you know, power, pop, and alacrity, and get the job done. So there are just so many different ways to do it. But as long as that's your intent, the fan is always going to be happy, and ultimately, you know, you will be employed. People will want to see you.
Well, do you know, they said, fellas, that some people said the reason why Sugar Ray Robinson fought as Devil May Care as he did was because it was very much part of the culture then, and he was well aware he couldn't be a box office draw, and he wouldn't be popular, and he wouldn't get opportunities necessarily if he stank the joint out, as they say.
Could you imagine?
And, you know, and I remember seeing there was a great documentary of Mike Tyson and Harry Carpenter back in the 80s when Mike was undefeated heavyweight champion of the world and still a real charmer without the car crash he became, you know, story. And he was saying, they were talking about Jack Johnson, and as much as complimentary as Tyson was about Johnson and as knowledgeable he was about him, he said if he was fighting today, I don't think he'd make a cent. He said because it's boring. you know,
Yeah.
defensive minded. So
that's my fear with Shakur. I think he's obviously, you know, he's so rated within the community. You know, fighters who can fight, they really know good fighters, and they all rate Shakur. But is he going to make money fighting the way he fights? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're hired as entertainment, right? But you put your safety first.
Yeah.
And when
I mean, did you enjoy the fight? For me, I kind of fell asleep watching that fight.
I'll be honest with you, Gary. I didn't even watch every round. I watched enough so I can come on here and know what I'm talking about. And I picked out some minutiae detail and started arguing with Silk about it, as we do. But I didn't watch every single round. At some point, I thought, let me just catch up on some of the other ones.
I found it hard to watch. Hard to watch.
And we love boxing, right? And we understand the subtleties and everything. It was tepid. It was tepid.
I love watching defensive fighters who make people miss, make them pay.
Panel.
I love amazing, but this for me was not that kind of defensive that is attractive at all. It's just not getting hit and not doing much, and then pitter patting just to steal rounds and like there was.
Well, yes, he hasn't completed his game, right? He hasn't completed his ability.
Like Michael. Like you talk about Michael's style. If you watch Michael fights, I've watched a lot of Michael's fights. Sure, he was a smart defensive fighter, but explodes all the time. I don't think Shakur exploded once. You know what I mean? Michael would open up when he opened up. Shakur was just so defensive in his offense. You know, like almost he would throw shots to hit, but not commit and not like super. You know, it's one thing being defensive, making people miss, but then when you are doing offensive stuff, he's still defensive. That's
doesn't want to commit.
Whereas Mayweather would commit. Yeah. You know, Tommy and Ray. When Ray tried to hit you, tried to kill you. You know, he didn't do it half-ass at all. And that's what made them fight so extremely exciting. But Shakur, when he goes after you, he's still defensive, which for me is tough to watch.
Yeah, there's a time it comes down to commitment, and you can see it in fighters. The guys that commit to the purity of the sport. And it's not even it's their personality. It's not even like it's a conscious choice. And I think Shakur would do really good, right? The only thing I'm sure there are a couple of things that could save his career or at least enhance his popularity. And that would be to line up the first 10 guys in his division, the top 10 contenders, and one by one, every month, fight one of these guys off. It's only going to be something like that that's going to make it worth it. Like,
but the thing is,
in the sport.
It's a mess of a situation. There isn't top 10 contenders. It doesn't really exist. And you've got 3 different rival champions at lightweight anyway. I'm trying to keep track of it. Just off the top of your head, who's the other lightweight champions of the world? You've got Tank,
okay.
Right?
Even the top 10 contenders, I don't know them in the lightweight division, but he can go from 10. He can go from 10 up to 1, and he can line them all up and say, "Listen, like Joe Lewis's Bum of the Month Club tour, right?"
But doesn't he need? But surely he's not. That's in a parallel universe where he's WBC champion. Doesn't he need to look at rival champions across the table and fight those guys, not just take it?
He's got to fight someone that we can get a gauge on him. We know what he is. Ryan Garcia, or like a Tank. He needs to fight someone that we all know the basic capability. Like the guy last night, you can gauge. He's a decent fighter. He was a good amateur. He had a lot of amateur. He's got a decent pro rate, but we're not gauging. If Shakur can make someone like Tank look stupid, then even if we don't like his style, we'll say, he's that good. Because no one can do that. But we need to have a gauge with someone that we really know.
I get that, but he needs to raise his star right now, and he's doing that. Like what's happening, whoever is matchmaking him or whatever is not. His star is not being raised.
Well, when you're a world champion, you're not supposed to be matchmaking quite. You're supposed to be taking on
fighting anybody and everybody. And that's why I'm saying you need to go further than the norm with this kid, because he's doing something. Like I don't think he's outclassing these guys because he's just so technically, I don't know, better than them, because he doesn't work to get those guys out. He's not saying you're not going the distance with me. So he's very comfortable in just outpointing them. But if you were to put him in I don't know, a different, more pressure-filled situation, or the perception of it has to be he has to fight somebody or a bunch of people where the perception of something is great. Like people are saying, "Oh my, he's fighting a contender every single month." So for the year 2025, in January he's going to fight the number 10 contender. In February he's going to fight the number 9 contender, and so on and so forth. He has to do something like that, and that may sound like
it doesn't work that way, though. I mean, it's novel, but it doesn't work that way. It's not going to.
Yeah, but you have to do abnormal with this kid because there's nothing else.
Otherwise, he's not going to develop.
I cannot
He's
see.
got to fight someone we know.
Yeah.
I mean, who's his last 5 fights? You don't know anybody.
He beat Oscar Valdez, right? Who was a name, but that was down at super featherweight, yeah.
Yeah, but like now, like the guy last night, no one's ever heard of him. The fight before, no one's
Well,
ever heard of him.
we kind. I know what you mean, Gary. We kind of heard of him because he fought Frank Martin, but that's the only reason I knew about him. And he's got
and lost.
Yes, quite right.
Okay, but so he has the choice of fighting. What are there? 3 other champions or 2 other champions besides himself? I don't know what it is. The thing is, it's not happening because people are like, you know what? They're looking at him right now and say, "You're not a draw. I don't see the money in fighting you." But like for Tank Davis, for instance, Tank Davis would be like, you know what? I'm the A side, you're the B side. This is how many seats I put in. Look at your pay-per-view numbers. You know what? Either you're going to take $5 million for this fight, and I get the the lion's share, or you go back and make yourself a little bit more attractive to people. And that's what I'm saying. He needs to make himself attractive to people. He needs to have something done that whereas he can still maintain his style, but just clean out the division and leave no other options. That's what he has to make this thing happen.
In any case, William Zepeda had a good win last night, another lightweight. That's why I mentioned him. Sid Boggle brought him up as well. He is exciting people, and he's got a fan-friendly style. Come forward, aggressive box fighter, puncher. Got rid of Giovanni. What was his name? Giovanni. God, my surname I've forgotten for some reason. I must have it here somewhere. But he got rid of his man in 3 rounds in any case, and he's someone who's knocking on the door of a fight with someone like Shakur Stevenson or leading rivals at lightweight. I don't know if anybody caught that.
Right now, he's damaged himself almost. You can't say beyond repair because yes, it is going to be who his next opponent is. But even still, people are going into his fights, Shakur Stevenson, with a bad taste on their mouth. And that's why they're fighting him. They're not fighting him in Vegas. They're fighting him in his hometown for a reason.
They're right. The reason they're fighting him in his hometown, and the problem with Shakur is everyone knows he's really difficult to beat, and everyone knows you're not going to make money fighting him because no one cares. So why take on a guy that's a nightmare for no money?
Yeah.
That's why he's not getting the fight he wants, because no one wants to fight him because he's extremely difficult. We give him that. But he makes everyone look bad because he's very talented, but no one wants to see it, so there's no money in it. So why take a fight for no money? The only way there'll be money in it is if he steps up to Tank or someone like that. Then there'll be money in it. And then if he can beat Tank, and if he can make Tank look average, then that will suffice to say this kid's amazing. But can he? That's the issue.
That won't happen. I say. I mean, it's gonna be a fight regardless. I mean, I think a lot of people were favouring Stevenson 2 fights ago, and now the pendulum of public opinion has switched towards Tank. But I think it's a tough fight for both of them.
Can I tell you? I personally, I never thought that Davis would have he would have a problem in the fact that trying to find him would be granted difficult, but once he starts letting his hands go, he's just chopping wood at that point.
Yeah, I've always favoured Tank as well. Did anybody see the controversial decision on the undercard? It was Oshaki Foster versus the Brazilian Robson Conceição. And some people are saying it's the worst decision they've seen in quite a long time, and that's quite a statement in the context of professional boxing, where we see bad or controversial decisions pretty much every weekend. So, what was your take on that one, Silk?
Yeah, wow. I must admit I didn't see all of it, but from everything that I saw, this kid was way out in the head, and I can't understand how. I don't understand how judges see something so blatantly different. Like you look at the point per. Well, I wouldn't even say the point purpose. You look at how conventional boxing is scored, and yeah, again, you may not like the way he does it, but he did it. You know what I mean? He did it. He absolutely won that fight. I can't even remember. I can't even remember seeing the kid get hit.
Do you know? I know one of the judges who scored for the Brazilian. I know he's a Liverpool, very respected referee and judge called Mark Lyson. Very nice fella.
Yes.
And what's interesting is I couldn't ask him. Suppose I inboxed him and said, or even said, do a live, come on live with us and explain your scoring. He's not allowed to do that. Do you know that? And I think that's a problem. Why can't we ask someone like Mark Lyson or anybody else, how did you score for the Brazilian who's now the
Can I ask you first, even before we go there, can I ask you, what's was he a fighter?
I don't know. I imagine he boxed amateur. He seems like someone who did, but I've never, to be honest, I've never asked. I don't know him very well. I just know him on the scene, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I know I don't want to sound biased, and there's a lot of good judges that have never fought before and they follow the rule, but I know it just seems, why wouldn't you use people of experience? I know.
I'm in two minds about whether people who judge fights should have to have boxed. I think it kind of helps. It's the same argument. It's a similar argument about coaching fighters, isn't it? And we talk about a few of the Mavericks who didn't box, but they had a really good eye and essence, you know, for aptitude for coaching.
I mean, you look at
I
was going to say, you look at like even the guys that do the punch stat stuff, and there's guys that are doing arm movements like this, and they're counting those things as punches, and you're like what?
Do you know the punch stats? They call it CompuBox. It's not. It's just two fellas who are counting punches.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like Dave and Steve who do it. You know what I mean? And they've got no particular eminence at all. And what's funny, isn't it, fellas, is that
they also have no experience. They both have never, the guys that originally, was it Bob Canobio and I forget the other gentleman, the ones that originally started the punch count thing, and they'd never boxed before.
And have you noticed how people...
they tell you what's a quality punch and what isn't? What's a jab?
Well, exactly. And have you noticed, you make that point, and that's a very valid point, have you noticed how people will say, fucking idiots, the judges, they must be blind or corrupt or whatever. Those judges don't know what they're talking about. And then they'll say, look at the CompuBox numbers. These are the ones. That's the holy grail that proves everything. And it's like, you don't even know who they are. You know who the judges are. They've got a track record. You can look them up on BoxRec and you can get used to their kind of form line. The CompuBox numbers are held up as these holy grail when nobody knows who's doing them even.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all. You know,
you know what's sad is the fighters, we got this big thing now, drugs, of course, in the PEDs in boxing, which are very serious, and the effect it has on careers and health. But we don't get into judging can you imagine you spend your whole life to get a world title fight and then get a bad judging situation? Like, where's the fighter's protection of getting a fair crack at the whip when there's been so many horrendous judges without? I mean, there's no repercussion on the judge. I mean, they may not get hired again, but the fighters can have a lifelong career destroyed overnight with no accountability because of a bad judge.
An interesting point Saj Ali has just made, which I was going to make as well. When you talk about boxers, experienced ex-professional boxers judging and refereeing, he says sometimes that doesn't work. Ian John Lewis was a decent fighter, but has had a lot of criticism, was sacked by the British Boxing Board of Control. He was one of the most controversial people. He became a whipping boy. He became almost like the poster boy for the bad decision, for the bad verdict, or for the crazy interpretation of a fight. And he's someone who boxed, as a pro and boxed at title.
And why was that? Did they ever get to the bottom of why? Has anyone ever talked to him and interviewed him and asked you, why did you choose that? What did you see?
He told me he'll come on the show at some point. He did say he's willing to come on the show. Now he's not represented by the board. He was suing the British Boxing Board of Control for racism, for discrimination based on racism, which is why he was because you know what, he had a lot of eyebrow raising cards. I'm not going to say he didn't, but the straw that broke the camel's back was Jack Catterall versus Josh Taylor won the first fight, okay? And because he scored that for Taylor by a wide-ish margin, he was asked to. The British Boxing Board brought him in for kind of a disciplinary type situation hearing, and they downgraded him from an A star to just a just an A class or B class referee, whatever it was. They downgraded him, demoted him, and in disgust he left and he started working for some renegade organisation called BIBA, British and Irish Boxing Association. But then he took out a civil a civil case against them for discrimination because he's black. And there's another referee called Jeff Hines who's also did the same thing. And I believe a Pakistani or an Asian Muslim boxer, female boxer, did the same thing all at the same time. So it'd be good to get Ian John Lewis on the show. He told me he had to wait till the lawsuit, but surely that can't go on forever. And
how long is the lawsuit?
I'm not sure if it's been resolved at this point or not, to be honest with you, Silk. It was a while ago now. I mean, I will hit him up again and say, do you fancy coming on the show on Sugar, Silk and Stretch? We want to talk about certain things. But he was, like I say, he was the one who voted widest for Josh Taylor when everybody thought Catterall had won the fight,
But they're both white fighters, right?
They are both white fighters. When I say racism, Ian John Lewis is black. You understand?
Yeah, okay. I was going to say the black guy was voting for the black fighter, or like...
he sued the board for racism or brought something against them for downgrading him as a judge.
So he made a controversial call.
Yeah,
they reprimanded him, and then
he said, "Is it because I is black?" Yeah,
racism.
Yeah,
okay, well, yeah.
You got it. Because you've got to be careful and make sure Silk understands these things, Gary. It might take quite a while.
I got to be thorough. Sometimes your accent's a little thick, and it's very hard to.
I'd rather have a thick accent than no. I don't know. Don't know the rest of that one.
Oh no, Ben, you would not. No, you wouldn't.
You're good. See, you are good. I like that. You took it there. What else, guys? There was other fights this weekend. So we spoke about the Sharky Foster.
I like the couple of prospects, Ben. There was a couple of great prospects.
Kamel Morton?
Yes.
I heard about him. I did not see him fight.
Made his point look amazing. There's another kid I saw, a couple of really good prospects. One kid who had his debut.
Yeah, well, Silk was watching him, I think. What was his name? Colon.
Silk. Oh yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, watch him. Yeah, he looked really nice. He did
really.
He did. I don't know. Sometimes I can't understand how people can go through a fight and hit somebody and nothing happens. That must be like falling in. When you're having a dream and you're falling, but you never hit the ground, but you're always scared of hitting the ground. I say when you hit somebody with your best shot and nothing happens, that's going to be that's a nightmare.
So well, I remember Ricky Hatton when he beat 7 bells out of that Juan Lascano, the Hispanic causing panic. And afterwards, he said, "It does your fucking head in when you hit them all night and they don't go down." But I think Keyshawn Davis was in a fight like that last night as well.
Keyshawn Davis scored an absolute monster. Yeah,
he was like nails, wasn't he? Apparently,
again, Keyshawn Davis.
That's the kid with the beard.
Yeah,
he fought the kid with the beard, and he was hit.
But Keyshawn Davis, I thought, as bad as the opponent was really difficult, but Keyshawn Davis showed some amazing skill and beautiful. He was adventurous with stuff, and I found that a good fight to watch. He had a very difficult opponent, and I thought he handled it. He couldn't get rid of him, but I thought he looked great doing what he did and made it fun.
Yeah, so it shows you there's an alternative there. You can go the distance and you can have a guy you can't shift, but you can still make it entertaining and captivating.
He was very creative. Davis was very creative. He tried all kinds of weird shit. I mean,
you commit to the punches.
He showed a lot of skill, a lot of talent, a lot of balls, a lot of character.
Yeah.
I think his stock went up.
There was one point in that fight, the first time, this always worries me, whenever a guy lays on your back and then you take a knee to get the guy off your back. Generally, whenever I've seen that happen, and even when people have done it to me and I refuse to go down because automatically right away it kind of demotes your superiority or strength or energy. And so I was kind of when I saw that the first time, I was like, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good for the kid. But you know what? He did that numerous times. He took the knee when the guy was laying on his back, got up and went back to doing his work. So psychologically, he appears to me, that tells me he's a very strong, secure individual.
Yeah, I thought I was very impressed with him. I haven't seen a lot of him. I've seen bits, but I thought he's a good fighter.
And I see Shane Mosley Jr. beat Danny Jacobs, which would tend to indicate might be the end of the road for Jacobs as a top flight.
Wow, Jacobs is still
I missed
fighting.
that. How was the fight, man?
I couldn't find it today.
But how was he? Because how was the fight? Because I missed that one.
Couldn't find it today, so I haven't seen it. I tried to find it. But
yeah, when I saw the pictures, I was like, "What, Danny Jacobs?"
Yeah,
that was 20 years ago. Last time I saw him fight.
Well, when did he fight Canelo? Was it 2017? No, when was it? When did he fight Canelo? 2019 or something?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. 3, 4 years.
I think it was 2000, even 2000.
Yeah, it was like 3 years ago.
It was like
2021.
I don't think it was more than 4 years max. I think
something like that. Yeah.
No, come on. His last big fight at middleweight. I remember, when did he fight for the middleweight title? I saw him
Golovkin.
I thought I saw him at the Garden. Okay, yeah, 2016.
Golovkin, 2016 March.
Yeah, that was quite a long time ago.
That was, yeah, and then he fought Canelo more recently than that. But let me see. I'll find out exactly when he fought Canelo since we've got into it. But
well, I'm surprised. His I don't know. It just seems like a lifetime ago the last time I seen him fight, or the last time I even heard his name in a relevant.
Remember he fought John Ryder over here at the Alexandra Pavilion 2022.
Okay, I don't remember that.
He lost a controversial decision to John Ryder in John Ryder's backyard. But he fought Alvarez in 2019, exactly what you said, Gary. So, and I say the last big fight was against John Ryder. That could have gone either way. Ryder got it, which is obviously Ryder got the shot at Canelo in Guadalajara after that. But, that was a total classic case of a fight. There was nothing in it. There was no way. If they'd have said Jacobs had won it, you wouldn't have had a problem with it. I don't think anyone would have done, And then it does
he's had an incredible character building career. Beat cancer.
Danny, yeah.
So he's a credit to the sport, and I thought that Mosley had took on maybe something a little bit over his head with him, but obviously that's why I was interested to beat him. Wow, because I think I can imagine he's that kind of fighter. I would still think that Jacobs is still pretty good,
Yeah. Do you know me and Jacobs have got a common opponent in the amateurs? He boxed a kid that I boxed called Ashanti Hendrickson. And the guy that Ashanti Hendrickson pushed him pretty close, apparently. It wasn't a Golden Gloves, it was some other kind of tournament, championship tournament, some cup or something. And he lost a 3-2 split to Danny Jacobs. So
how did you do?
I lost a majority decision to Ashanti Hendrickson in my first fight in a very long time. And then I spliced a video where there's me against Ashanti Hendrickson and then Danny Jacobs, and they're both close nip and tuck fights. And obviously, the very disingenuous point I'm trying to make is I'm right up there. But
no, you are. I mean, that's the reality.
I wouldn't exaggerate it, Gary, but I'm a little bit proud. To have done
of course you should be. Hey, look at it this way. When if you take the average man, you put him in the ring, and you ask him to box, no. You know what I mean? It's not even
in the world of white collar. You see it when people and they're even quite big muscle bound guys, rugby players and stuff, and they fancy themselves. They've got the testosterone and the ego, and they're very quickly humbled. You must have seen it a million times, both of you, because you see it in the gyms when you help out with people.
It's really one of the ugliest things, the most emasculating things to watch. Like, you just look at it and you're just like, oh my God, this is not. This is not what we think a standard man fights like, or you know what I mean? So if you're not a trained fighter in any of the, whether it's wrestling or kickboxing or MMA, whatever it is, it looks absolutely terrible. It really does when you see a man who can't fight.
Yeah, and it's weird because some people who've been around boxing all their lives and they've been in the gyms and they box since they were kids and their whole family's boxed, they see white collar sometimes and they honestly think, what the fuck is this? Some people didn't even realize people were that physically uncoordinated or that bad at the art of gloved fist fighting because they'd never seen it. And I remember, who was it? It was someone like Jamie Moore or someone who boxed at a decent level, right? And he he saw Ross Minter, who's Alan Minter's son, started a white collar, what he called it, a semi-pro league years ago, and he called it Queensbury Boxing League, and he did that for a few years, and they got a TV deal with Eurosport, which is a pretty big network. But the boxers were kind of white collar, you understand, or unlicensed kind of standard, like that's a term that Gary will understand. And this guy, Jamie Moore, whoever it was watching it. And thought, what the fuck is on the TV? This is a shocking standard. And Ross Minter got a bit offended. He was like, oh, come on, mate. Well, what it is, they're novices. And he said, oh, sorry, I didn't realise, but I just wondered what it was doing on the television. That's all. But it is amazing, isn't it? And these days, there's so many of those shows are mushroomed, okay? They've really become popular, especially, certainly in the UK. And nowadays, you see people and there's journeymen on that scene who fought, they claim to have fought about 300, 400, 500 times. And they see themselves as their kind of, road warrior legends, when really some of these shows leave a lot to be desired. Do you know what I mean? Not all of them. I know Chrissy Morton will be watching, is one of my closest friends, and her bloke Richie is one of our biggest fans. So I'm not slagging white collar off per se, but there's a lot of nonsense out there. You should see some of the stuff that goes on.
Hey, we got to say hi to Isham Pickering. What's going on, young man?
Yeah.
Hey, Isham.
Yeah, he was on the show. I think you missed that one, didn't you, Gary? When Isham was on, that was me and the Silk. But yeah, Isham was a good fighter. He was a European, British, and Commonwealth champ, which there's not many people in recent years who could say that. Billy Joe Saunders did it. There's certain fighters who've done it, but it has a majesty which is sort of
now
antiquated.
Ben, you're tight friends with your boy Billy Joe. What is happening with it? Is he completely given up on boxing?
Do you know what Billy Joe's doing, right? He's helping out at the West Ham Amateur Boxing Club. He has a son who boxes who's doing really well.
How old is
in the
son?
Amateurs. He's still junior, still a junior. I know that.
What's junior?
Huh?
What is junior?
He looks about 13 or 14.
Okay.
He's still at that kind of level, but he's winning everything right now. Billy Joe looks a little bit over his ideal fighting weight, as you see him on the story on Facebook. He likes posting pictures of him driving along with music in his car. It seems to be one of his major kind of programming ideas, marketing-wise. And he looks a little heavy, which he always has done when he's not fighting, and he seems content. He's not fought now for, what was it, 2021 against Canelo, right? Is it just getting on for... He hasn't fought for 3 years. The longer he doesn't, the less... He told me last year he was still coming back. He said he misses the sport, still fancied the fight. He was talking about Eubank Jr., but now Eubank Jr. is talking about fighting Canelo, and it looks like he might get it. It's either Eubank Jr. or Edward Berlanga on Mexican Independence Day for Canelo. So I'd be surprised if Billy Joe comes back, but he's helping out at the boxing club, and he's training his son, I think.
Is he financially, like, he's doing okay? He doesn't have to go out and he does okay like that, right?
Yeah, he's not short of a few halfpennies, to use your term recently, when you said it'd be nice to have a few halfpennies out of this show. I think Billy Joe is set financially.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Nice to know. And does his son look special? Like, does he look like he's going to do anything in the world?
I've just seen the pictures and the victorious pictures afterwards when he's won another title, but it looks that way. And like I said, I think Billy Joe is... He's at West Ham on Fridays, I think, because he's handling some sparring. And I've seen Facebook posts where he says anybody wants sparring down at West Ham on Friday. West Ham being a really traditionally iconic London amateur boxing club. So I'll have to go down there soon. It'd be good to get him on a show. It'd be good to get a piece with him, wouldn't it? So
yeah.
What's next, Ben, for the schedule?
Boxing wise, you've got who's fighting next week? I did know this is there's a big fight in the States next week.
Crawford.
Yeah, sorry, Ennis. Ennis versus David Avanesian.
Ennis.
Ennis is fighting David Avanesian, which is more interesting at least than it was. He was supposed to be fighting the Canadian, Cody Crowley. He pulled out for whatever reason, an injury. And I quite like the David Avanesian fight. David Avanesian's no joke. I know he got stopped by Crawford, but I thought he turned in a positive performance against Crawford in December 2022. He wrecked Josh Kelly, didn't he? He wrecked the unbeaten record of Josh Kelly back down at welterweight when Kelly was still campaigning there. So I like the idea of Ennis versus Avanesian. I mean, obviously, he'd be coming to win. He'd be coming to shock the world. I don't suppose he'll beat Ennis.
What do you think of the best? What's the best moves for Ennis right now? In everything in his favor. Doubtful he's going to get the Crawford fight. So besides that,
you know, he's just got to look for the most attractive fights out there, hasn't he, and to build his brand more? Because I think Ennis, to some people, he's a special, maybe generational fighter. He's definitely a fan-friendly fighter and an exciting fighter and a good, you know, he's got a good aesthetic for people who like the showboat and all the rest of it. So I think Ennis just needs to build his profile, doesn't he, and to get into decent fights. As long as the public know where to find him, I think he'll be a hit, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how do you think he does that? Just continue bumping off the people he bumps off, and then at some point, hopefully, a super
I
fighter.
think he should sign with Matchroom if he hasn't done it already. Because I mean,
think
I
he
heard
has,
it.
yeah.
I believe he's a free agent, right? And I know Eddie Hearn likes him. Why not?
I'm sure the
What,
Saudis.
what would that afford him signing with them?
Opportunities he ain't getting now because for a long time he hasn't been the. I don't think he's been marketed very well, and I don't think
So he doesn't have a promoter.
I don't know, to be honest, what his promotional situation is, but I believe he was a free agent for Eddie to express some interest in him. No, Eddie's already signed him because they said welcome to the
team. They
team.
made an announcement.
They made an announcement. Thank you.
I
It
think
said
now
welcome to the team.
I think is you know, he'll be introduced to the Saudi plan, I'm sure, because he's that kind of fighter that I'm sure they're going to love him.
So this fight's on DAZN, is it, a Venetian?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I would say that's the plan, certainly, Silk, is to try and build his brand. And if he can gate crash that kind of Riyadh season party, then that'd be a good thing for him, wouldn't it? Because for me, it's a shame, you know, that these guys don't get a coronation anymore. They get upgraded. They become an interim champion who gets upgraded. They fight a guy for a vacant title. They don't get a Leonard versus Benitez. This is it, kid. This is the moment. Like, sink or swim. And so their legacy is diminished. And financially, I don't know how it works out, but it doesn't work out for all of them, does it? For all the arguments and caveats people raise, oh, this is a business. It doesn't work out for everybody anyway, does it?
No, never has.
You know, so I think it's a shame we don't get these coronations anymore. When you remember someone becoming a champion, it's getting so much rarer to remember the night. I bet you not one of you. I say not one of you. There's only two of you. I bet neither of you can tell me who Gennady Golovkin beat to become world middleweight champion. Any version to actually win the first title. I bet you can't tell me.
No.
Now, if I asked you, who did Marvin Hagler beat to become middleweight champion?
Alaminta.
Thank you. You see my point, Gary. And we could play that game a few times. Golovkin, they're ruining boxing history. That's what they're doing. I'll tell you, all right, technically, Golovkin became champion when he beat a guy called Juan Nilon Tapia, which was actually an interim, then he got upgraded, blah, blah, blah. That is what they're doing to boxing history with all this politics and belt peddling.
And who is they? They is more than
the sanctioning bodies and the television companies and anybody who's complicit in that.
And you're saying because that's what they're doing it specifically for themselves and not for fan entertainment in mind.
Definitely not for fan entertainment. They're doing it because what they realised, certainly from the 1990s onwards, that they realised it was a supply and demand situation, and the more world titles they had, the better, the more they could sell the fights. You know, that's why Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn were fighting for world titles instead of domestic and continental supremacy, like John Conte and Chris Finnegan, for instance, or Tony Simpson and Mark Taylor. They decided that world titles were commercial, and so they created more because they needed more. It was supply and demand, and it's run riot, the whole situation. And not content with having four different bodies, they started to split up the world titles within the same bodies and say that's interim, that's emeritus, that that is in recess, that guy. It's stupidity, it's greed. It's who was saying it the other day? I think they were on the show, and he said no. Johnny Nelson said it when I interviewed him. He said it's the sanctioning bodies and their stupidity and their greed. The same situation where Dubois now. I saw some fucking idiot the other day saying Dubois can't be considered the champion until he beats Joshua. Hello? I don't need to tell you why that's just ridiculous.
No, you do need to tell me.
I do?
Yes.
Yeah. Because neither one of them will be the champion even after Joshua beats him. Even if
Joshua
does beat him.
Yeah, of course, yes. But okay, so they stripped Usyk, right?
Well, no, he jumped before he was pushed. He gave it up willingly and said, "I give it to you, my gift." But it shouldn't be like that, should it? this is something which has actually happened. This is a reality. That is the man. He is the champion, and we finally have clarity on that we can all trust. And then suddenly they tell you this guy is, and then some fucking idiot who people listen to these days because he's a bit of a talking head says he can't be considered champion until he beats Joshua. What we need is to break the whole thing and start again from scratch. Literally tear all these weeds out, just gut the garden. Then
well, the thing is, isn't that the nature of a free market enterprise kind of thing? It's like you're free to start up any, like somebody from, I don't know, the land of Oz could start up the Oz Championship belt. And
they have done. Do you remember the WAR? Remember WAA?
Oh yeah,
I
was the WAA middleweight champ.
Sorry, we got to back down. So don't say you can't be called champ.
For me, I didn't want to tell anybody. The belt was nice. I actually still have it right here in my thing. But it's because it was me. For me as a fighter, it was something I fought for, something I physically won because I fought for. It was a 15-rounder. I won. So I keep it, but I did not.
You went 15 rounds, Silk.
Yeah, right. I didn't go on TV and say, I'm the World Athletic Association title champion.
Because you knew it was ridiculous on that level.
Yeah, I mean, Marvin Hagler was the champ. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you pick the worst division to hold a silly belt in at that particular time. but at the end of the day, it's still a physical reality. That's why some fighters get annoyed with me, because I've been so vocal for the last 10 years on that. They say, whether you ever do more than 3 rounds, you fucking overrated, fucking egomaniac prick. They're like, they get annoyed. They hump with me, like, who are you to belittle our achievements? You never had a pro fight in your life. But I can't help being passionate about this stuff.
Hey, listen, yeah, I mean, and I appreciate that passion backed by, a ton of knowledge.
Yeah.
And a lot of things there's a lot of things that people forget, and that you have this inordinate ability to be able to pull it all back to like.
What fascinates me with the belts is the WBC International used to be between like 10 and 20, right? Mm-hmm. Top 10 and 20 rankings, right?
Yeah.
To get your
top 15. It was like a top 15 ranking, I think.
Top 15 ranking. But yet, if you look at Pacquiao's career, late in his career, he fought a former world champion for the WBC International, like a major name, like a Barrera or someone, for that belt. And I'm thinking, why? And this is after he'd won 6 world titles. He fought for the WBC International title belt, because I remember seeing it thinking, why is that belt on the line? 2 world champions fight for the WBC International. And it was simply to put some belt around somebody to sell tickets.
Well, what's interesting about the
if you look at the record, Ben, you'll see the fight. It's way up in his career, way after he's won a lot.
But I think that all started maybe like in the mid 80s. I do remember coming to New York, and I remember fighting for the WBC Intercontinental title. Yeah. And the WBA had some version of it as well. And so they start at that point, somewhere in like the early or middle of the 80s, they started to proliferate boxing with different types of titles. It wasn't just the WBC or the WBA. So first, obviously, it splintered off from the New York whatever. Then went WBC, WBA, then eventually the IBF. Then they started to make like demi divisions of their titles, and those started to hit in the 80s. And so this is just like the natural.
And they said it would, the Ring Magazine did this really funny satirical piece in the mid 80s, and it was about this guy called Bobby Bump Bump Beastly, who held about 27 different titles, and he was defending one of them or several of them against a guy called Wild and Wonderful Willie Slavin. And they said Slavin had a title too, but very little was known about his boxing style because he won his title in a Publishers Clearinghouse contest. And it was just they said, when we heard that there was a fighter ranked by the IBF in something called the super middleweight division, we realized that this satirical piece wasn't too far off. So basically they were predicting the future, and how ridiculous it would get eventually a few decades down the road. And it has done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sid Boggles says, can I name a fighter that after losing a world title went on to regain his British title? I believe Ken Buchanan did. after losing to Duran. I'm pretty sure Ken Buchanan definitely was British champion after losing to Duran in '72. So there's one.
Wow, that was the latest.
He's saying that Carl Thompson already did it as well. He said Carl Thompson did it too. I think Dennis Andrews probably did it too in that case as well. I believe Dennis Andrews certainly fought for a British title after he lost world title fights to Jeff Harding, for instance, most recently. But
I'm not sure if I know Kirtland Lang probably fought for a British title after being in world contention, not to win
in world contention, but he never contested a world title, did he? Much less win one.
No.
But, see, Kirk. When people talk about Harold Graham as the go-to is that he was the greatest British fighter never to win a world title, arguably. I always think of Kirk as possibly one of the very best British fighters who never even boxed for one. You know what I mean?
Having beat Duran.
Yeah. You know, he beat Duran. He beat a bit of Duran, who was in a bit of a slump at the time, who was having a bit of a kind of pit stop in his career. But you know, Kirk was a genius, I think. And typical Kirk, he went missing for 2 years after beating Duran, didn't he? He just went walkabouts. They couldn't find him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was what happened there? Do you know?
What Duran and Kirkland Lang?
With Kirkland Lang, like why he went off on that?
Initially, because the fight was in Detroit, right? I think at the Joe Louis Arena or Cobo Hall, if memory serves. He went on a bit of a bender. Apparently, he found two birds and had a bit of an extended threesome with them for a bit. He said, I do remember him saying they couldn't walk after like Tuesday or whatever. A bit like a Craig David song kind of theme. But so he had those two birds for a little bit.
How much did he get for that?
That'll be an interesting question. I don't know who would know. You know who might know? I know his trainer is a fella called Joe Ryan. I've not seen him for years, but he'd be the best person to ask. And Joe Ryan, by the way, reckons he got off with some super famous soul singer in that same trip. So that would be an interesting. Maybe we should get him on as a guest. Kirk, unfortunately, is no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he went missing. Mickey Duff couldn't get hold of him, and literally for 2 years you couldn't find Kirk. He was just because Kirk liked the drink. He liked the ganja. He liked the spliff. Yeah. And he probably liked some other powders as well, to be honest with you. You know, he certainly finished his life. He was in a care home towards the end, but has anybody ever seen that Steve Bunce interview?
He was in a coma?
A care home. He was in some kind of care home, yeah. But did anybody ever see that interview with Steve Bunce? Did you see it, Gary, where he finds Kirk and they're sitting on a park bench, you know, drinking Stella and chatting in Hackney Park?
Yeah.
You know, so Kirk was a free spirit, really. You know, some people, they don't want to take life as seriously as their talent and their situation demanded of them. And so sometimes he'd be brilliant, and sometimes he'd have lapses in concentration. He'd get knocked out by a guy like Buck Smith, or or what was the other guy's name, Donovan Boucher. So Kirk could be bad, you know, or inconsistent, or he could be brilliant. He certainly did a right number on George Collins, didn't he, Gary? You're the guy that you trounced in the amateurs so famously. I love that fight, you know, as well, Gary, because you see, George was a good boxer, right? Well-schooled guy. But he's got no idea how to fight a fucking maverick like Kirk with his hands down by his hips, with all these strange movements he makes.
I remember people saying how you see it go, and I sparred a lot of rounds with Kirk, and I said,
I'd love to see
that. George, as much as I like him and all the above, he does not have an IQ to get in with the Kirtland Lang. He's just too much of everything, you know.
I'd love to see that. It's a shame, you know, it's a different era, Gary, because if you were active in this era, same for you, Silk, you would have more footage. Just that someone would have took of like Gary Stretch sparring Kirtland Lang, or Michael Elijah with a bunch of his gym wars in Gleason's gym and all the rest of it. But Gary Rickards has mentioned that the Kirtland Lang Colin Jones fights were fantastic. And Jones should have been world champion, robbed twice against Milton McCrory. Well, have you ever seen those fights? Because you can't get them in their entirety on YouTube, which is a great shame. But
I saw the 9 rounders.
Yeah,
Colin Jones and Milton McCrory.
Well, those are on YouTube. But before he got a world title shot, he beat Lang for the British welterweight title. Right, Lang was boxing his head off for 8 rounds, and then Jones flattened him in the 9th round. I think it was with a right hand in the first fight, and then a barrage in the second fight. It was a left hook, right? The second fight, because Harry Compton goes, and he's done it to him again in round 9. They were, you know, when you get identical fights, Silk, you lose 8 rounds and you hit him on the chin in the 9th and you win. Twice that happened. Lightning struck twice.
That's crazy. And you automatically say, what's wrong with the other guy that he would let it happen twice? You think you'd know better.
Well, but yeah, say Lang was he was a reflex fighter and he did it on field and he probably just felt confident twice. You know, but it was bizarre the way it happened. It was a bit like the fact that Riddick Bowe and Andrew Gallotta, that reminds me of that in a way, because it's like he got disqualified again for low blows, you know, and just did the same thing, you know.
Yeah, he's going to do the same thing.
On that, Ben.
Yeah. On that note, we've been going for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Listen, guys, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you guys who keep us company on these Friday and Sunday nights and keep the comments coming at us. Sorry if we can't reply to all of them, but we get to them as many as we possibly can. Plenty of more exciting things to look forward to. We've got more press conferences and content coming up from myself and the other two. Peace out. This time I want to do it like this.
I gotta run, boys.
All right, young man.